Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I step off the train and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good afternoon, listeners. It's a lovely day here in suburban Chicago. The sun is out and the breeze is cool. It's in the mid 70s or low 70s, I guess. It feels like a nice day in mid-May. Instead, it's a nice day in mid-April. But I'm enjoying my walk home. It's sunny. I hope I won't get sunburned. It's also April 15th, which means it's tax day. Ugh. I guess in honor of that, I was thinking I haven't done a board game sommelier in a while. So I thought, why not today? Let's do a tax day board game sommelier. For those of you who haven't heard one of these, it's been a while since I've done one. A board game sommelier episode involves me suggesting a theme and suggesting some games to go with it. Sometimes I'll also offer like movies to go with the different elements of the theme. I may do that if I can think of it, but honestly, at this point, I'm just interested in talking about games that have these different themes around taxes. If you're outside the US, hopefully your tax day is not April 15th as well, but ours is. All right, so to start with, I thought I would mention the classic model of actually just economically paying taxes. There are a number of different games that involve taxes. The earliest one I had was the first game that helped me understand how percentages work in taxes, and that was Monopoly. In Monopoly, of course, if you draw the wrong community chest card, you get poor tax, and you have to pay, I think, 15% of your cash to the bank, which is funny now. I feel like if I were to make a game today and put in a thing where it says calculate 15% of your cash and turn that in, people would say that's too hard, but that was a standard thing. It expected you to do 15% of your cash, as I recall. I might be misremembering it, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I wonder what it is now. Is it still that? I doubt it. I bet it's just a flat fee. But I was trying to think of other games that also involve paying taxes. The one I could find for sure is Orleans. In Orleans, there are these event tiles. There are, I think, 21 of them, maybe, or maybe 18. And each round you're going to reveal one event tile, and then at the end of the round that event tile happens. Some of the event tiles are good, some of them are bad, and there's 3 of each. Notably, the Black Plague tile is the worst because you lose one of your tokens. It's always a bummer to lose the token you just bought. I've had that happen to me before. But hopefully what you do is you pull one of your 4 colored tokens that come with the game, because you don't have to use those at all. But one of the tiles that appears 3 times in the deck is the taxes tile. And when that comes up, you have to pay 1 coin for each, I think 1 coin for each trade house that you have. So no 15% calculation there. I also, 2 games that I haven't played that have taxes. I did look up, apparently there's an expansion for Power Grid called Power Grid Taxes. And the game Hegemony, which is about running an economy, also has a taxes function, of course. In that game, you either play as the government, the wealthy class, the middle class, or the working class, and you're trying to make things best for your group without destroying everything. And of course, taxes are a crucial part of that game. So those are the games that I think of that have a classic idea of taxes in them. If you're going to watch a movie that would go with it, I would say my favorite movie that has to do with doing taxes is the Ben Affleck movie, The Accountant. Now, I recognize that movie is apparently problematic, particularly because Ben Affleck's character is depicted as being autistic, and the methods by which he evades or eludes his autism are particularly grueling. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about the depiction of autism in the film to know how it's received by autistic communities. I think it's meant to be positive, but I don't know that it comes off that way or succeeded. Nonetheless, it's about an accountant who likes doing accounting and also is an assassin. So if you like that sort of thing. Anyway, forensic accounting is a key part of the movie, and that seems like it's related to taxes. So on to our second thing related to taxes, and I would say part of the reason that governments collect taxes is to redistribute wealth to, if you have nominally the reason governments collect taxes is to do the business of government, but everything costs an amount. But if you have a graduated income tax where wealthier people pay a higher rate than poor people, then part of the goal there is also to redistribute wealth, which means that you're trying to address the question of poverty. And how can one talk about poverty in games without talking about London? London 2nd Edition is one of my favorite Martin Wallace games. It is an excellent little engine builder, although it's weird to call it an engine builder because many times when you run the engine, the pieces of your engine disappear. So you only get to use them once. So I'm not sure engine builder is the right. It's definitely a tableau builder. But again, every time you run your engine, your tableau disassembles itself. So it's a bit idiosyncratic in that way. But there are a couple cards in the game and a couple elements in the game that function like taxes. The first off is there are actually, or that have to do with poverty. Every time you play a round in the game, you gain poverty cubes. And part of the goal of the game is to not have too many poverty cubes. But then you also have an element of there are actually cards that levy taxes. It depends on how much property you own, determines how much you have to pay. There are paupers in the game that are constantly getting in the way. And then your goal is to build a city that alleviates the poverty without generating more. But of course, the more stuff you build, the more poverty gets generated because it's capitalism. So London 2nd Edition really focuses and explores the question of poverty. Now, if you're gonna watch a movie that has to do with poverty, I mean, there are a lot of them. How about, so I'm just thinking about movies that I have actually seen rather than ones I would want to talk about. How about The Commitments? The Commitments is an interesting film about a group of aspirational musicians putting together a band in 1980s Ireland, which was desperately poor, trying to make the most out of what little they have and enjoying music. It's not really about poverty so much as that's the backdrop of the movie, but it's a great movie and it's what I think of, or what I thought of in this moment here. So London 2nd Edition and The Commitments. Perhaps you could point to Irish poverty as having something to do with London being built. Seems like there's some cause and effect there. The next theme that I wanted to mention in regard to taxes is the idea of kids. If you have children and you're filing taxes in America, you get a dependent credit. You get to reduce the amount that you pay your taxes by a certain amount for each child that you have that's dependent on you. Thus, having more kids reduces your tax burden. Of course, you have to pay money for the kid, which is why they give you the tax discount, but whatever. So I was thinking about games where having kids changes the economic outcome. And of course, the classic of this is Agricola, along with all sorts of other worker placement games. But Agricola is kind of the key one there because it's a crucial question as you're playing how much you want to gain children to leverage the ability of more people to do more work. But then, of course, you have to secure more food for those workers at the same time. And it eats up some of your resources to build the extra room in your house and then to have the child and they're eating food before they're producing things for you. So it's an interesting development. And of course, Agricola being the foundational space that creates the more workers, more food element, then you see a variety of other games that do this. Another one that comes to mind is Stone Age. Of course, Stone Age is interesting because one of the strategies sometimes people use is called the starvation strategy, where they get children and then just don't get enough to feed them. That sounds pretty horrible. When I think about a text that you might watch to go with this, I'll suggest the A24 horror movie, The Witch, or it's spelled The Vivitch, V-V-I-T-C-H. This is about a family of subsistence farmers in colonial England, New England, who are bewitched and bedeviled by the devil and a bunch of witches in the woods who are luring their children away and killing them. It's a really moody, dramatic movie with excellent acting and really creepy setting, but it also reminds me of Agricola. It's this family, they're trying to make food, get food out of the ground, and they have just nothing. It's an excellent kind of depiction of what the people in rural Germany would have been doing at the same time that the people in colonial New England were doing it. So that's Agricola. Next up, back to the sort of ideal of taxes, is the notion that taxes are supporting society, that is a collaborative effort that keeps society afloat. And of course, if it is under supported, then society collapses. I'm going to point to two games that have this idea of like a collaborative effort and then a seesaw toward negative things if people aren't contributing. The first of these is Brian Boru. This is a game I've talked about recently. In Brian Boru, everybody needs to work together to fight off the Vikings. If all of the Viking attacks have been defended at the end of the round, then nobody loses any cities. If some of the Viking cities have not been, if some of the Viking attacks have not been fended off, instead somebody loses cities, and that can be a dramatic swing in points, especially because cities are kind of hard to get. They're almost impossible to recover once you've lost them. So it's a really strong penalty to lose a city. The other game I would point to is Australia, which is the Martin Wallace follow-up to A Study in Emerald. This takes place in Australia, where Cthulhu and his minions have been ravaging things. As Westerners are building farms, Cthulhu wakes up and starts destroying them. And if the Westerners don't all work together to fight off Cthulhu, then Cthulhu wins. So there is, again, this idea of, but if you spend a lot of energy fighting off Cthulhu, then you're not spending energy developing your farms and mines, and you might lose because you spent too much of your time fighting the monsters. A lot of post-apocalyptic movies play with the question of how much effort someone should put forward to protect themselves versus protecting the group. Night of the Living Dead, the original George Romero movie, has that crucial question built in and makes a good meal of it. So I would say any post-apocalyptic movie that involves people trying to survive against the odds would probably work here to go along with the supporting the group to sustain society question. The final element of taxes I wanted to bring up is actually the literal adding up of numbers. A lot of people find taxes intimidating because the numbers are complicated. In fact, that's the point, I think. But there are games that people don't like to play or sometimes find intimidating because the numbers are so complicated. There are a lot of games that come with a score sheet that involves adding up lots of numbers from lots of different categories. But I wanted to point to 3 different games in particular that involve a fair amount of arithmetic. Seven Wonders involves adding up a bunch of different categories, and the science category is confusing enough that it's really helpful to have someone who has memorized how it works and explains it to help everyone calculate their science score. And then I will point to Transatlantic, or Crossing Oceans, but Transatlantic more dramatically, as a game that involves lots of multiplication and careful consideration of a variety of different factors to determine how many points somebody has scored. And then the grand pappy of them all is Bunny Kingdom. Bunny Kingdom involves a dramatic tallying at the end involving multiplication, such that they've included a table in the game. Also offer an honorable mention to Acquire, which features a fair amount of arithmetic when players are getting shares, losing shares, and so on. This is, of course, true of 18xx games as well, but I don't really play those. So that's my board game sommelier for tax season. What games and movies do you recommend for this terrible day? Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you next time when you listen to Pick Up and Deliver. Thanks for joining me. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.